Finally, after 7 decades of diplomatic deadlock, India and China appear ready to tackle what many thought was impossible: permanently settling their disputed border. Think about this for a moment. Since 1962, every Indian Prime Minister, every Chinese Premier has inherited this boundary puzzle. Nehru couldn't solve it. Neither could Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh, or even Modi in his first decade. The line that separates our two nations has remained as blurred as a monsoon horizon. But something has shifted in 2025. For the first time, both sides aren't just talking about managing the border. They're talking about delimiting it. That's diplomatic speak for actually drawing permanent lines on maps and, eventually, on the ground. So why exactly are we stuck with this mess? Let me take you back to 1914, when the British drew the McMahon line without bothering to ask China's opinion. Classic colonial arrogance, you might say. Fast forward to 1962, barely 15 years after independence, and this cartographic confusion exploded into our most humiliating military defeat. The numbers tell the story. 4,057 kilometers of disputed boundary split into 3 sectors. In the west, China controls 38,000 square kilometers of what we call our territory, that's Aksai Chin. In the east, China claims 90,000 square kilometers of what we call Arunachal Pradesh. Do the math, friends. We're talking about an area larger than many countries. But here's what changed the game completely. 2020's Galwan Valley clash. 20 Indian soldiers died, our first combat casualties on the China border in 45 years. Suddenly, this wasn't just about old maps and historical claims. It became personal, emotional, and politically explosive. Let's quickly break down the geography of the India-China border. The boundary is divided into 3 main sectors. First, the western sector. This includes Ladakh and the disputed region of Aksai Chin, where most of the recent tensions have emerged. Second, the middle sector covers Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. This is the shortest and relatively less contentious stretch. Finally, the eastern sector, spanning Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh, features the McMahon line and is often the center of diplomatic standoffs. So, from west to east, each sector has its own unique challenges and history. Now, let's look at the historical background and current status. The roots of this dispute go back to colonial times when unclear agreements left the boundaries undefined. After independence, both India and China inherited conflicting maps and claims. This confusion led to the 1962 war and many standoffs since then. Today, despite several rounds of talks, there's still no officially agreed boundary, just the line of actual control, or lack, which remains disputed and shifts with each side's perception. That's why tensions keep flaring up even now. When we talk about the India-China border, 2 major conflicts stand out. First is the 1962 war, a full-scale conflict where China captured large parts of territory in the eastern Ladakh region, shaking India's security confidence. Then, after decades of relative calm, the 2020 Galwan Valley clash shocked the world. It was the first deadly face-off along the border in over 40 years, leading to casualties on both sides and escalating tensions sharply. These incidents highlight why resolving this border issue is so critical. Recently, India and China have taken significant steps to ease tensions and improve relations. In August 2025, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited New Delhi and held talks with India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Both sides agreed to form special expert groups to accelerate boundary delimitation, improve border management, and maintain peace and stability. They also decided to reopen border trade at 3 points, resume direct flights, and facilitate easier visa processes. These developments indicate a genuine desire to work towards a structured and peaceful resolution of the long-standing border dispute. Now, understand the process of border delimitation, the key to resolving the India-China boundary dispute. Step 1 is drawing boundaries on paper. Here, both countries examine historical maps, gather geographical data, and negotiate to agree on a boundary line or delimitation on maps and documents. This is a purely technical process done through discussions and coordination. Step 2 is demarcation on the ground. Once the boundary is drawn on paper, it must be physically marked on the terrain using pillars, markers, and signs. This step is crucial but very challenging, given the rough mountainous terrain, glaciers, and weather conditions along the border. Step 3 involves the formation of joint expert groups. These groups, comprising officials, military personnel, and technical experts from both sides, work closely to resolve disagreements, conduct surveys, and monitor progress. They also ensure ground-level cooperation and confidence-building measures. This three-step process is long, complex, and sensitive, but essential for lasting peace and stability. The process of border delimitation is not just technical. It's packed with serious challenges. First, there are historical claims. Both India and China possess different historic maps and assert contradictory ownership over the same territories. Reconciling these claims is a major hurdle. Second, legal ambiguity persists. No single legal treaty clearly defines the entire boundary. Past agreements provide guiding principles but lack specific coordinates, making formal settlement tricky. Third, the geographical challenges are immense. The border runs through glaciers, high mountain passes, and tough terrains that are hard to survey and physically mark. This slows down demarcation and adds costs. Fourth, political sensitivities are high. Any perceived territorial concession can trigger strong domestic backlash in both countries, complicating negotiations further. Finally, strategic infrastructure development by both sides, roads, bridges, military posts, makes compromises difficult, as they represent significant investments in control and influence over disputed areas. All these factors combine to make the border delimitation process slow, complex, and delicate. When it comes to solving the border dispute, there are two approaches. The minimalist solution focuses on small, sector-by-sector agreements with better coordination and patrols, quick and politically easier. The maximalist solution aims for a full, final boundary delimitation, a comprehensive but long-term and complex goal. Both have pros and cons, but most expect a mix of both in different timeframes. A permanent boundary between India and China would have major positive implications. First, it would reduce military tensions along the border, lowering the risk of clashes and enhancing security for both sides. Second, with fewer border disputes, funds currently spent on defense could be redirected towards much-needed development and welfare projects for the people. Finally, a settled boundary would foster regional stability, encouraging better diplomatic relations and economic cooperation, benefiting not just India and China but the wider region as well. While recent talks between India and China are promising, caution is essential. The border dispute is deeply complex, shaped by decades of history and previous setbacks. True progress requires sustained diplomatic engagement and patience. Adopting pragmatic approaches, focusing on achievable steps like confidence building and sector-wise agreements can pave the way for lasting solutions. So, while we watch this process with hope, we must remember that peace is a gradual journey, not an overnight achievement. In conclusion, the renewed focus on border delimitation between India and China marks real progress, but significant challenges remain. The promise of transforming decades of tension into lasting peace offers hope for both nations and the region. Achieving a durable solution will require patience, trust, and continued dialogue. With commitment from both sides, a stable, clearly defined boundary can become a reality. One that not only resolves disputes but also paves the way for stronger cooperation and development. What do you think? Will India and China finally reach a lasting agreement on their border? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe to Policy 360 for more insightful updates. Stay informed and stay ahead.